and everyone's like, ugh, big city man. But the stakes are like, will this lamb survive?
Exactly.
Which is not minuscule stakes, but is also like, I just get to think about sheep for an hour.
I like to just like hear about all the things that the different people are feeding him.
Yes.
Like he goes into raptures, like describing Yorkshire puddings, for example.
And he's right.
I've never had a Yorkshire
Oh,
pudding.
it's so good. And you use it to mop up the drippings from the roast.
And I want to do that.
Yeah, I'll make you some.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wait, it's red. We're recording.
We are recording. Red means go.
I finally figured that out.
Red means go.
When my parents and I sat down to watch that episode, I was like, so let me guess, are all the things bright and also beautiful? And are the creatures great and
But
also
also
small?
small.
And it is bright.
It is.
Verdant,
Wise and wonderful.
verdant
Yes.
green pastures and hills. And I thought it would be fun if Mary Graham gives us some updates, and blind react is the rage out there on social media lately. I know it's not a visual podcast, so you can't see Cricket and I's reactions. But
It's okay. I'll describe their faces.
I'll try to make really noisy reactions.
Cricket's eyebrows are raised.
I'm game to try. Let's try it.
We should, because we're going to be very frightened, and we're going to try and lighten the mood. I'm sorry.
I'm doing my eyebrow warm-up exercises right now.
Good.
One.
I will
2 and 3.
begin things with a joke that I have used in my personal life several times, but has not yet debuted on the pod, I think, which is,
Knock knock.
who's there, Cricket?
I'm just kidding.
It's the censors. Close the door. Which is that perhaps the only time that you'll hear librarians say, get away from the books, is when people are trying to remove them.
Exactly.
Normally I'm like, here are the books, here you go. But now I've got the cardboard jousting lance that I made several weeks ago for a video that the youth department filmed because we are full of chaos. I have a cardboard jousting lance. Get away from the books.
And a battle cry, which is also on the video.
Yes.
And I was thinking about how if anyone asks me what my favorite book of all time is, I would always say Fahrenheit 451, which 10 years ago didn't feel like an important answer. Most people would look at me and say, oh, okay, yeah, of course, I've read that one. But truly, now I believe I wear it with a badge of righteousness that if you're only going to read one book in your life, let it be the book about how scary it is to not have books.
Yeah. So what are the updates? This is going to be mostly Michigan focused.
Yes.
Although I was just speaking of the discussion of public radio that we had before we hit record. I was just this week on The Current, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's morning national news show, because they did a segment on what's all this then?
What's all this then?
What's all this then? My God, what's happening over there? But over there is the country to the south of them, or slightly to the north in the case of Detroit. And the librarian that they interviewed before me was a library director in Missouri. And the Missouri legislature voted to pull state funding from public libraries. So that's bad.
We've reached that point.
What are my eyebrows doing?
You're making a scrunchy face that I've only really seen on cats who are like really angry about whatever they've just smelled.
That's right. Something is rotten in the state of
Missouri.
Missouri, I guess?
And also several other states.
Missouri, more like misery, am I right?
Ooh.
You're listening to A Little Too Quiet, the Ferndale Library podcast. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library, and it is once again time for another quarterly update on the state of our intellectual freedoms. And Mary Graham, check me here, but when we talk about intellectual freedoms, it's sort of like this. Cricket wants to go to the library.
Uh-huh.
Cricket,
I do.
I should hope so.
Yep.
Cricket wants to go to the library because there is a book on the shelves there that Cricket really wants to read.
Yes.
But I don't like that book. And I don't think Cricket should read that book. And I also don't think anybody anywhere should be able to go get that book. But it's Cricket's right to be able to, keyword, access that book.
Yes.
intellectual freedoms, I passed.
Intellectual freedoms you've passed. And my reaction to that, would be like, well, you have a right to not read that book.
I have a right to not read that book.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have a right to say no one anywhere should be able to read that
You
book.
definitely don't have a right to say nobody anywhere should be able to read. There's no necessarily about this.
So, Cricket, you get to read that book.
Yes.
Hot dog.
That's right.
And moreover, even if Cricket were under the age of 18 and this was perhaps a book for adults,
Are you calling me old?
I am saying, I assume
Mature.
that you have attained your age of majority.
You're mature.
Fine. I accept mature.
and
You're someone who, let's say, watches PBS. Someone who enjoys James Herriot.
I'm a viewer like you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this is also a lot of, again, in the case of, like, I heard an audio clip from a politician in Missouri talking about we need to protect the innocence of children. Mm-hmm. As someone who works with children, and we don't separate youth services out into like teens. Like some places have teen librarians. We don't have that here at Ferndale. We have a staff of 5 full-time youth librarians, and we all do all kinds of age levels and programming, which I love. And I love the fact that I buy nonfiction for ages 0 to 13-ish because I do everything up through middle school. When I'm buying nonfiction, I'm interested in, is this appropriate for the sort of like psychological or social development of children? And sure, and yeah, a 5-year-old needs different information than a 15-year-old, which is why we put the books for 15-year-olds in the YA section. But also, you don't magically hit a new developmental milestone every time you have a birthday. So there are 13-year-olds or even 11-year-olds out there who are like, where are the books that you give the high schoolers? And that's their right. They literally have a right to that. And there's a lot of people out there who don't like that. Because I see children in my job every day. And they are interesting individual people. People are different people. And children are people. And, you'll also find people using language that's intentionally vague. So, like, what we're talking about here is obscenity.
Right.
We've mentioned this on the podcast before. Obscenity is a legally definable term.
Oh, hold on a second.
Yes.
Hold on a second.
Yes.
I learned this from the radio broadcast. Was it, hold on. Was it Handmaid's Tale is now considered pornographic? Was that the sentence I literally heard someone say?
That is the sentence that you literally heard the gentleman from PEN America say, and he meant it in a people are trying to claim.
Right. Okay.
Now, The Handmaid's Tale is not pornography because pornography, The Handmaid's Tale is not written with
Handmaid's
the sole...
Tale's a novel.
Yeah, and it's not written with the sole intention to sexually arouse. Therefore, like, words mean things. And so, but people are trying to say, oh, that book has any sex in it. Or even just, I find that book upsetting. You are allowed to find a book upsetting.
It's okay to be upset. It's like
the
feelings
human
101.
experience.
Like
It's the
sometimes
human
you're upset
experience.
and there's like things you can do.
Yeah.
Like observe your feelings, take a
Right.
deep breath. I don't know.
Yeah, and not ban books.
Absolutely.
But, the thing is, we don't carry obscene materials because that is something that has to be legally defined. So, truly by definition, nothing in this library is obscene. And it's not just about sex. It's also about race. It's also about racial injustice, racial identity, and it's simply stuff that has happened in American history
Right.
and continues to happen in American life. We, the work that the Intellectual Freedom Task Force is doing has so far, been focused a lot on preparation.
Oh, but let's reintroduce that for the listeners who might be tuning in. The Intellectual Freedoms Task Force is a part of the My Right to Read
Coalition,
which is part of the Michigan Library Association.
Yes, which is the state professional association for librarians
That's
in,
right.
you guessed it, Michigan.
Which I think started a year ago, if not more.
A year and change ago.
There you go.
Yes, which tells you how long some of this has been going on.
So the task force.
So the task force, we are library professionals from all across the state, and we get together once a month to talk about what's all this then?
What's all this then?
What's going on? What is going on in the House of Commons, except the House of Commons is the state of Michigan.
What on earth?
What on earth? And we sort of divvy up, okay, who needs to go do what. So, once I got assigned to do a training for a library that was doing an in-service day about what to do if, you have a patron coming in who's really mad about a book. Like, how do you, the person at the desk, handle that? We have other people who, are coordinating, making sure folks get to board meetings that need to be got to. And then sometimes, as with our late breaking news, we get to coordinate the legal big guns.
Ooh.
So, and when I say late breaking news, I mean I received this email an hour before we came on air.
Oh, wow.
So this is about Cass County, which is on the southwest side of the state.
Okay.
Not terribly far north of the Indiana border. And Cass County's Board of Commissioners were looking to adopt a quote-unquote child protection ordinance, which would require signed legal statements attesting to the quote-unquote safety of materials at the local libraries in Cass County. And they also proposed the threat of felony charges and warrantless arrests.
Oh.
You know what we don't like over here in the personal rights sort of world? Warrantless arrests.
Right.
And yeah, so this is bad. It's been pulled from the agenda for the most recent meeting because quite a bit of people called in and said, "What on earth are you doing?" But it will be back at some point. The ACLU of Michigan has been contacted. The Attorney General's office has been contacted. American Library Association, Pen America, and that's all. That was reported to MLA, and MLA has the resources and the folks to be like, we're calling Dana Nessel.
Right.
Because the legality of this is
Cass County, you said.
Incredibly spurious.
Is it
yes.
just widespread for all libraries in Cass County?
Yeah, which I think is 3.
Is their board of
systems.
commissioners responsible for the library?
Well, I can't answer that, but that's a good question. Like when I say this is all very legally spurious.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine all those libraries have boards of some kind. And
So this is very scary and is sort of probably the next thing that we're going to have to worry about. And also related to what you see in Missouri is having legislative or government bodies instead of, a patron who comes in and says, I don't like this book. And we say, okay, well, you can fill out this 3-page form and we'll take a look at it. And we make no guarantees. And maybe they'll fill out the form or maybe they'll go, nah. But that's something
which is worth noting, listeners, that
Yeah.
when someone comes in, we don't say, oh, get out of here with that.
No.
We treat all of this seriously and we give them a form. They can fill it out. It is called a
request for
Request for
reconsideration.
request for reconsideration, and we have a whole process.
Yeah, there is a whole process. And if you fill out the form completely, we will indeed do what the form is titled and we will reconsider the title. It is entirely possible that the appropriate people will consider the title and go, yeah, it belongs on the shelf. The only thing we've promised to do was reconsider it.
Right.
It's also entirely possible that the people will read the form and be like, hey, you raised some great points here. There is actually misinformation in this book.
Yeah, this is not accurate.
It's not accurate. We're going to replace it with something on the same topic that has been vetted to be more accurate.
Yes.
That's right. That does happen.
There's, the process contains multitudes.
The
Right.
process
And it
contains
works.
multitudes, and it's going to be more pleasant for everyone if you don't yell at anybody.
I think that, like, rules for life. Yeah.
Rules for life. And so what...
So that's the patron side
So
of it,
that's
but
the
now it's
patron side of
escalated.
it. But now we're seeing it escalate to
Right.
government bodies. And we said this is new and not new, right? Like this is a moral panic. And we've seen that in something like, the Satanic Panic of the 80s.
Right.
Which was very much, protect the children from being sent to daycare because their mothers go to work. But you can't squash every story that you don't like because it has sex or queer people or discussions of race in it. You can't.
Right.
And
There's a
it's
couple
going to
things here.
take a lot of collective action to ensure that
Right.
doesn't happen.
Right. Well, to bring it back to intellectual freedoms, we're really just talking about you have the right to be able to access it.
Yes.
It's not as though the moment a child walks in this door, we hand them a prepared bag of, well, here are 10
Here's
scandalous
the literal
books.
gay agenda.
Right. These things are here, just static on the shelf.
And that scares people, Jeff.
Right.
Like people are like, "Oh no, my child could discover this." Yes, you have correctly described the function of a public library.
yes.
I'm sorry the possibility of learning frightens you.
Right.
And
But-
and I don't
want to talk to their kids, right?
yeah, and
Like,
it's-
the line I always hear is like, how am I going to explain this to my child? And it's like, well, there's actually like a lot of ways that you
and
could.
literally that's why we have the books. Is people are like, here's a book about human reproduction for 7-year-olds. How am I going to explain this to my 7-year-old? Well, with the book.
sit down with
because
them,
it's written for 7-year-olds.
turn the pages, read
Yeah.
the words, have
Yeah.
a little discussion,
Yeah.
feel your feelings.
Feel your feelings.
But what?
You can do it on a bench here at the public library.
Yes.
Well,
We have some very comfortable benches back in the kids' corner, and it is a very soothing space.
we're definitely not here though to tell. We're not on any soapbox to tell anyone how they should be parenting.
Correct.
I think the biggest thing we get to that I like for people to understand is that, let's say I'm a parent or caregiver who is nervous about a certain book on the shelf. Perhaps I do not want my child to be able to read that book. The whole thing is that you can't keep that opportunity from other children.
That is correct. And you
Or
also
other-
can't make librarians in charge of it.
Right.
Quite legally,
Right.
you can't. You are not allowed to come to the library and say, this is my child, here is their name, here is what they look like, you can see them. Don't let them check this book out. Because I'm legally not allowed to say
What is the
in loco parentis.
There we go.
We are not allowed to act in loco parentis. So if you don't want your child reading a certain book, you have to come with them. And you have to stay by them, because I literally can't go, hey, your mom says you can't read that. It would suck if I had to. But I legally can't. So, and yeah, you always have to keep in mind, like I think about, we have some great books about gender, and of course I'm blanking on the title of literally every one of them. But we have some great books for like young children about our first conversations about gender and gender stereotypes and things like that. And I have parents who come in and ask for those by name and are like, oh, like my daughter's starting to make comments about like the gendering of the color pink. Do you have any books that can help us discuss this? And we definitely do. And so there are some people who want these books. And they have the right to access those books. Those books need to be on the shelves because they have to be available.
And that's the exchange. Someone comes up and asks you. It's not like you're leaning to the side of the desk and saying, psst, come here.
Hey, kid.
Hey, I got this book.
Uh-huh.
No, it's asked for.
Right.
And you say, it's right here.
Yes.
And that's how it works.
And that is how it works.
that is the core principle.
Again, that is, you've accurately described the function of a public library.
But I want to talk about a little bit about Missouri and update the folks who are listening who haven't maybe heard about Missouri. I know this was 2 weeks ago.
So
3 weeks ago?
I don't know the details of Missouri super deeply, but I do know the basic facts, which is that the Missouri State Legislature voted to pull state funding from libraries. And this is going to affect different libraries in Missouri differently because they receive differing amounts of state funding. So, for example, the librarian who was speaking on the CBC radio broadcast right before me, that would be a certain percentage of her collection development budget, but that would not close her library. They would just have less money to buy materials, which would be bad. It would shut other libraries down, not dissimilarly to the way that Patmos Library in Jamestown will be shut down if they can't get a millage passed. So what we're seeing it happen very locally in Michigan, as opposed to like Missouri. That's a whole state. And this gets tangled up with things also, like, because I really, really hate when people say, you know, oh, well, it's Missouri and they voted for that state house, so that's what they deserve. No, nobody deserves this.
Right.
Nobody, no matter what state they live in, deserves any of this. It's a violation of their First Amendment rights. And part of the job of librarians is to look out for everyone's First Amendment rights.
Intellectual freedoms is this kind of subgenre under the umbrella of First.
Yes. Oh, Cricket and
Amendment.
Jeff are doing fun, like,
We're making-
circular hand motions now.
Like an umbrella.
Like an umbrella.
Or a cloud. Or
Yes.
just some, maybe a rainbow perhaps.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And it's all, intellectual freedom is underneath this.
Yes. Yep.
When you say First Amendment.
Yes.
But I want to drive it home to, and I can't make this funny,
Uh-huh.
how scary it is if you lose a library.
Yes.
Because we're talking about intellectual freedoms and we're talking about books mainly.
Yep.
But when I want people to appreciate, when you lose a library, you can't just say, well, we lost the building that's full of books.
Correct. You are losing social services.
computer lab, Wi-Fi, internet, programming, events.
Free place to go.
Air conditioning.
Air
Yep, that is
conditioning.
often
Heat.
climate
A
controlled.
place where you can still fax.
Free bathrooms, a place that you can still fax. Seriously, people, because sometimes people will say to me, "Why do you even still have a fax machine?" Something dinosaurs. It is one of the most secure ways to send sensitive information,
And we do it every day.
and we do it every day. Like my mother works in healthcare. Every doctor's office has a fax machine.
Oh, yeah.
And you can still fax
Yeah.
at your public library. And
But this is a place where we have book clubs and
Yes.
concerts
Yep.
on this monthly basis.
Yep.
And we have people who return and regularly attend these things.
Yeah,
We're a part of their monthly lives.
we have, regular story times
Right.
for small children. And one of the truly best things about being a youth librarian is getting to meet a child as like a little baby and watching them as they get older. And being like, oh my goodness, I remember when you were like a little potato and you could sit up, but you couldn't walk yet, and you definitely couldn't talk. And now you are talking and telling me all about the books that you've read that you've
Right.
liked recently. Best job. I have the best job in the world.
This isn't a one-to-one comparison, but in my head, I'm almost starting a sort of side movie where it's a Wonderful Life, and we're imagining what would happen if there wasn't libraries.
Yeah.
But we weren't trying to jump off a bridge. People are pushing us off the bridge.
Yes.
No, and
Stop
in
pushing
a
us off the
wonderful
bridge.
like the library is like what is the bad outcome?
That's what happens to women who don't get married.
Oh yeah, libraries famously not portrayed too well in It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
So MLA and My Right to Read and the Intellectual Task Force are kind of like the Clarence who are
Yes.
maybe saving us. I don't know if this metaphor tracks, but try, folks, to imagine the scary world without libraries and Lionel Barrymore. It's scary.
Do you want
Every
some
time a bell rings, a librarian gets her wings.
Or her cardigan.
Or
their cardigan.
Their cardigan,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you want some good news?
Yeah.
The good news is the vast majority of people in the United States are still vehemently against book bans.
Oh, absolutely, right?
Absolutely. Like, people are like, what's all this then?
And that's it. I mean, Mary Grimm and I started really joking, and you're literally tuning into this podcast because you have heard all these things vaguely floating out there in the news world, and you're probably thinking, what's all this then?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it truly is based in fear. The fear of the library is this place that can expand your understanding of the world outside of a narrow framework. Because that is what a library ideally is. That's a place where you go to learn more about the world, which is complex and vast. And most people think that that's a great thing. So if you, dear listener, are one of those people, please find your local library and call them up and say thank you. Please figure out when your board of trustees meeting is or your board of directors meeting is.
Show up and
say, golly gee, I love the library, and I think book banning is bad, and I trust that this fine institution will uphold my intellectual freedoms to the fullest extent of their ability. I promise you the activation energy is low and the rewards are high. If you show up at a library and say to your library worker, gosh, thank you for all you do. I love it here. It makes our day. We tell each other about that. It's just really freaking nice.
Yeah.
I can concur.
Yes.
It's good to hear.
It's good to hear. And, something I got asked about by Canada was, these, in some places, librarians have to deal with very nasty comments. And I said, we've sort of seen this uptick across all sorts of service jobs, service industries, in the waning days of the pandemic of like rudeness towards people who have public facing jobs. Stop that. And I think that this is part of it, compounded with, I think there's some people who, when they think that they're on the right side of everything, think that they can be mean about it. And that is a person sitting at that desk.
These
Be
are
nice to that person, please.
right, and I'm not here to defend any of that behavior, but we are all, and by we I mean all 7 billion of us.
Yeah.
We are all weary.
Yeah.
Capital W.
Yep.
We are all tense.
Yep.
We're all tired.
We're all stressed.
We have gone through it.
Yeah. And many of us make it through the day without losing our crap to a single service worker.
And then also, does that also not unite us? Are we
Yes.
not all tired? Should we all
Yes.
not be tender with each other?
Yes. Jeff, that's a great point.
But the pandemic compounded it.
Yes.
I think that was a formidably existential moment and scary moment,
Yep.
and we're all weary.
Yep.
I'm tired right now.
Yeah.
I'm also old. My back hurts. I'm cranky.
Yeah, I want to go home and watch PBS.
I just want, I want to go watch my James Harriet. We're tired, but I did see something on TikTok, which is another thing that seems to be scaring people lately, about how we saw an uptick in challenges and bans as possibly a corollary with how tense and afraid and weary the pandemic seemed to have made certain pockets of the population.
Yeah.
And they have decided to take that weariness and tension
Yeah.
and concentrate it into this.
Yeah.
All of this then. Troubling times.
It is. And here's what I would say to that, because dear listener, I mean, I would assume certainly if you are a regular listener to the pod, it will not surprise you. I mean, as library professionals, we're like, get away from the books, you know.
Right.
Book bans are bad. We support intellectual freedom. Ma'am, this is a Wendy's. And so the more good news I have is that there are a lot of us, and you can do something.
Right.
You can choose to be kind and tender
Sure.
with each other.
Sure.
And you can choose, if your library has a millage vote coming up,
Right.
you can choose to be like, gosh darn, I love those people.
Right.
I'm going to talk to all of my friends and all of my family and make sure they talk to all of their friends about why the library is great and we should vote yes on giving them more money. I want people to understand, the direness of the situation. And this is a tightrope I think that we've been walking, most of us, for, to almost 10 years at this point.
Right.
Of wanting to have enough information to go, oh, I should do something about that, and not being so frightened that we're paralyzed by it. And so I would say, you feel your feelings. It's going to be okay to feel, you might feel afraid.
Right.
That's okay.
Right.
You can't let that dictate what you do. I am afraid every day of my life. And mostly it just makes me mad. And when I'm mad, I'm like, ooh, these people who want to ban the books,
Right.
they better watch out, because they're going to have to get through me first.
There's a futility factor. I think
Yep.
that we all feel that there's literally nothing we can do about climate
Yep.
change at this point. We all look outside our window, sadly. Oh man, recycling, does it work? And we all feel like, oh, will it really make a dent if I call my senator? Yes, no. Are you cynical about politics? But if you go to your library and just say hello,
Yeah.
I like what you're doing. You're doing great.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yes.
And we're friendly.
Yep.
And we love it.
And also for me, I more and more have been leaning into, what's the reason not to? Is it going to make it worse? How much is calling my senator going to help? I don't know.
We don't know.
But I'm going to dial him up so that I can say that I did it.
Right.
Because it's not going to make it worse.
Right.
And I am going to recycle all of my glass and plastic bottles, because that truly is one less thing that I personally put in a landfill. I just, is it gonna save everything? No. Like, we need to be going around to like the top 10 polluting corporations and be like, you are literally not allowed to do this anymore. But it's not making it worse.
Right. I think I'm also saying don't be shy.
Yes, don't be shy, for
you're
sure.
You're not bothering us. You're
Oh
not
God,
bugging us.
you're not. No, so often I will have adults, children approach me at the desk and be like, I'm sorry to bother you. And my line literally every time is, this is what they pay me for.
Right.
Like,
To be bothered.
but you're not bothering me. This is the best part of the job.
But even specifically on the level
Should
of
have
like,
done that with the signage. Is just have giant signs that said "bother me" at the desks. I think we went with like "ask us," but
yeah.
"bother me" is also good.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about on the level of just walking in and pledging your support,
Yes.
even just verbally.
Yeah.
You're not bothering us. You're not
No,
interrupting us.
you're making our day.
We are ready for it.
Yep.
We are weary. We are tense.
Yep.
We
And-
want our cardigans and our wings.
And also from a practical standpoint, whenever people tell me that they love something,
Yeah.
I'm like, this is literally useful information for us. If people come in and say, actually, I had this whole family come in and tell me they loved a book about mermaid folklore that I'd bought, because folklore, it is in nonfiction.
Yeah.
Melville Dewey, that's literally another podcast.
Sure.
But it means that I buy a lot of the fairy tale books. And I bought this book about mermaid folklore, and this whole family was like, this was awesome. And I was like, cool. And I've been getting a lot of questions about magical creature books recently. So clickety click, time to buy more magical creature books. Now you're going to get more of what you want. Now I know that my collection's going to get used.
Sure.
Everybody wins. So we definitely, first of all, I'm just straight up glad that you and your family had a great time with this book. That is it, baby. And also, thank you. Thank you for telling us.
Yes.
Information. We are
Feedback.
They gave
It
us
works.
they gave us a degree in information. Like literally, it's what the letters after my crickets' names say. And so we love information. Please come give it to us.
And we'll give you some.
Especially right, like
For
you
free.
know, for I can't stress how much. So often, small children come up to me and say, "Can we buy the books now?" And I'm like, "Oh no, there's no money, hun.
Right.
It's you have to bring them back, but like is free." So you know, and if you come in and say what you love, even if you're just doing it to be like, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you I love you guys." We also are like, are you interested in finding more of what you might love? That is also what we are here to do. 'Tis the gift that keeps on giving. And there is so much to celebrate about it. And I like focusing on that. Like when you're trying to figure out like, what should I do? How can I help?
Right.
Oh my God, this all feels awful and I feel sick to my stomach. Think about the good things. Think about like, oh, well, I want to go, you know, help these guys who did a Keanu Reeves display for Keanu Appreciation Month here at the Ferndale Area District Library.
If you've been tuning in, I think this was vaguely referenced in a previous episode that was part of an April Fool's prank where we had an entire display dedicated to Keanu Reeves, and we kept it up for 30 days.
We did.
Because, of course, we would.
Yes. You know, think about that. Think about the stuff that you appreciate that you're like, now wait just a minute.
Oh, absolutely. Your library's there for you.
Yeah.
We even just got an anecdote the other day because we have a library of things. And someone came up to the pop-up used book sale that we were doing off-site at another local business where people were just charmed to encounter librarians in the wild. And
We are very charming.
Indeed. And they're like, oh,
And
we love the
wild.
library.
Yeah. Sometimes they're like, oh, they're outside their natural habitat.
Someone came up and said, I was having my wedding outdoors. It was a small affair. And we were, of course, going to have people giving toasts. And we realized at the very last minute that we needed a PA. And by last minute, I mean the last minute. And the Library of Things had a PA, and we saved their wedding. Well, we didn't. I mean, the wedding was great. It was never not going to be great. I mean, you know, mazel tov. But we kind of saved the day. And the
We
Library of Things
did.
was there for them. So
Now I have to
that.
describe my own facial expression because I'm wearing a mask, but I have this enormous grin.
I know.
That's the best story I've ever heard. Protect your libraries. They too might one day save your wedding. I'm okay if you do things that are good for this library out of self-interest.
Right.
Please do.
Right.
Please say, oh my God, one day I might need a PA. I'm voting yes on the millage. I don't care. You
Right.
have voted yes on the millage. Godspeed.
Right. Right.
And
One-
also, your library is here for you. And that's what I think that's what I want to
We're
emphasize.
literally here for you.
We're literally here for
we're
you.
here for you.
And I think that some of perhaps some of the people who are frightened by these books, I understand if you feel like the very presence of some of these books means your library isn't for you. That's not true. We want to hear about the books that you want. We will buy the books that you want. You have to leave the books for the other people alone.
Apparently, someone else wants to read Bono's biography, and I respect that.
Believe me, we have so many books here that have me squinting and going, huh? And you know what I do? I say, that's not for me, and I'm not going to check it out.
Right. It's all a tapestry.
It's
all
all
an ecosystem.
Hey, Jeff,
Tapestry.
if you wanted to fill out the request for reconsideration form on the Bono biography, we would take it seriously.
But probably we would go, well, this is factual, and people are interested in it. So we have reconsidered it, and it is staying.
That's
You
it.
know?
You are welcome.
To do a 3-page book report.
But you know what, though? I'm fully aware and can appreciate that there are a bunch of people out there who do authentically, genuinely, sincerely want to read that biography
Yeah.
by Bono
Yeah.
or whatever other book.
Listen,
And I do not want to deny them that.
I
Yes.
keep replacing the Ernest Hemingway books when they get beat up.
But like, Everybody's got theirs.
Well, that's the thing, is that you have, under a literal amendment, have the right to an intellectual freedom.
Yes.
But I don't know if this is written down anywhere. I don't know if the founding fathers ever had this, but you have the right to not like a thing.
Oh, my favorite founding father is John Adams. That was his whole shtick.
Like,
that man
you-
didn't like anything.
You have a right to be upset about something.
Yeah, that man was upset his entire life about everything.
It's okay
And I respect
to
him.
not like things. It's okay, but don't be a jerk about it. It's okay to not like things, but don't be a jerk about the things you don't like.
Cricket, that was amazing.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
I changed one of the words to be.
Did you steal that from something?
It's
Cite
a
your
song.
sources.
It's a song.
Oh, I've never heard it before.
My friend Kevin taught it to me.
It's incredible.
Jerk was a different word when I learned it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think that we need to make it the theme of the intellectual freedom advocacy movement.
Well, it's okay to not like things.
Yeah, it is. And also, if the reason that you don't like things is because of bigotry, I would invite you to re-examine your heart.
There you go. So, is there anything else that we didn't cover? Anything else in the news?
I don't know, but I didn't think I was going to be singing today.
You sounded great.
And yet here you are.
I will say the Michigan Library Association's Bonfire store has some really cool t-shirts. So if you, dear listener, are like, gosh, I would like a t-shirt that tells people how much I support libraries and intellectual freedom, you can get cool shirts that say things like read more, ban less, or I read banned books all day long, or my personal favorite, stand against censorship. That one has a knife on it. That is cool. That is Bonfire is like a platform for nonprofits selling merchandise. So part of that, the MLA and the Intellectual Freedom Committee gets a cut of if you buy t-shirts.
The Fahrenheit 451 fan in me is a little worried about that name, but that's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
But they do make great shirts. I have one.
Yes,
and I have
they're very
one
soft.
that says ban less, read more, ban less.
Yep.
And there is one that I think features, it gets the message across, but features a chipmunk in a dress because whimsy.
Because whimsy.
Oh, I didn't know about this.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's really great. It's really great. There's also one with a fancy fox.
That's right.
And they, I think, say something along the lines of like, don't tell me what to do.
That's what a fancy fox would say.
That is what a fancy fox would
right.
say. And I will also say, I think certainly since we last recorded an Intellectual Freedom Pod, the fabulous youth librarians of Ferndale went to Spring Institute, which is the statewide conference for just youth librarians in Michigan. And the keynote speaker on the first day was Kyle Lukoff, who is a fantastic writer for children. He does picture books up through sort of middle grade chapter books. Highly, highly recommend his books Too Bright to See and Different Kinds of Fruit. And he did a great keynote speech, and he spent most of it talking about like First Amendment law, which was super fun because the whole time I was like, oh, I know that. I know the Miller test. We went to library school together. Like it was really great.
Like the task force scattered throughout the room.
Basically,
they're
it's
all
like
doing...
ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
But one thing that he did mention, and I completely sympathize with this, and I suggest that folks who are anti-censorship sort of ponder this. He hates when people cheer when it's like, as in his introduction, it mentioned that many of the things he has written have been challenged or banned in various places, and some people went woo, and he was like, I understand what you're trying to get across there, which is support. I hate it when people woo. And I'm not really going to spend this speech talking about what it's like to have your books banned, because that's the short answer. Feels bad. Feels bad.
Right.
Instead, I'm going to talk about all of these legal principles. And so I would keep that in mind, especially as, for me as a queer person, especially when I see books that are explicitly queer being banned because they're queer, like that causes a pit in my stomach
Right.
on a personal level.
Right.
Like that is a feeling of like personal loss of safety for me. In addition to, I work in the intellectual freedom profession, and so that is also professionally offensive. When you ban books, the librarians, they take issue with it.
Again, nuance, layers, and so something I if I'm reading that right is there's this other aspect to this. There's some shirts out there that will even go so far as to say, read banned books, yay banned books. They might even list some of the banned books, which is also getting the point across.
Yeah.
But parenthetically or tacitly, it's like, oh, but isn't that also super concerning. Like, isn't that also super distressing?
Yeah.
Well, like, yeah,
like,
they
there's
shouldn't
that
be
punk
banned.
rock angle of, ban books.
Yeah.
But then, oh my God, look at that list.
Look at that list. And I think sometimes people, like I had a patron and their child in a couple of weeks ago asking actually specifically for books that have been challenged. And many of them were off the shelves because they've been checked out so people can read them, which
Right.
is great. We're doing our job. But I handed them Charlotte's Web. And they were like, really? And sometimes people will list banned books to get that reaction to be like, oh, can you believe people were mad about Charlotte's Web?
Right.
Well, I think we've just discovered people can be mad about literally anything.
Right.
And so I don't always find that helpful either. You know, and again, I get what people are trying to do, but I appreciate and I think share sort of Kyle Lukoff's perspective of, let's talk about the rights side of this. Let's talk about, like, yeah, often this is an act of bigotry. And frankly, no matter what you don't like in a book, you're not allowed to take it off the shelves because you don't like it. And I'm sorry that I didn't write these details down, but I've often found myself going, these people are behaving as though Pico versus Island Trees doesn't exist, which is a Supreme Court decision that says that, say, a school board can't take books out of a school library because they don't like the content. It's very much content based,
Right.
and it's really exactly what's going on. It says you can't take that away just because you don't like what's in it.
Right.
And that protection applies to public libraries as well, honestly, even more broadly, because we're not school institutions. I checked with a lawyer about that. And recently there was a judge, I can't remember in what state, that almost verbatim said, why are these people acting like Pico versus Island Trees doesn't exist? You're literally not allowed to do this. It is illegal.
I mean,
Put that thing back where it came from, or so help me.
judges like precedent, right? That's kind of a thing they
That
talk
is
about
a
a lot.
major thing they talk about.
Talk about a lot. So, and I'll say something that is going to come off ominously, but
Dun, dun, dun.
as I unpack this a bit, kind of jumping off of where we were going with that, someone might say, oh, I have no idea why they would ban Fill in the Blank or Charlotte's Web. But you then have to do the math and say, well, there's nothing in the book that I find necessarily offensive, but someone else somewhere did not want someone whose life experience is not mine.
Yeah.
And I'm not picking up on it, perhaps. And I'm thinking, well, gee whiz, why would they want this one band? There's something else going on. There's nuance.
Yeah.
There's a reason someone else didn't want someone else to read that book.
Yep.
Or even me, for that matter.
You know, maybe, yeah, because there's going to be something else in a library that you don't like either.
Right.
Like that passes all of the standards of, you know, some kind of merit that puts it, you know, good reviews or an audience or, you know, a patron has requested it, that's put it on our shelves, that would pass reconsideration and we would retain, that you're still not gonna like. And we don't get to take that book off the shelf either. And that is just, I would rather live in a free society
Right.
than only have books that I think are acceptable on the shelf.
I would rather live in a free society. And that's why Bono is staying on the shelf,
Yeah.
at least.
I'd rather live in a free society, and I'd rather live in a society that values the personhood and autonomy of children.
And that guy who had the house with all the cats in Florida, he's staying too.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Hemingway.
Oh, that guy.
Anyway, reference.
See, I know so little about him because he annoys me.
So I've taken
And
it
you
the
have the
other
right to be
direction.
annoyed.
And I have the right to be annoyed, but by gosh, we're keeping The Old Man and the Sea on the shelf.
So Mary Graham, he annoys me so much that I actually have made hating him a hobby. And so I learn as much about him as I possibly can.
Yeah.
In order to, like, you know, just dislike him.
See,
and
you're allowed
enjoy
to not like things.
I'm allowed to not like things.
But don't be a jerk about the things
And
you
I'm
don't
actually
like.
I'm allowed
Exactly.
to enjoy not liking things.
Yeah.
And
I think
have
it's-
fun with it.
I think it's important to have like a friend or a group text where you can be a little bit of a hater. Very importantly, you can't go against federal law
Right.
when you do that.
Sure.
We do, and I know I repeat this over and over again. We live in a society.
We live in a society.
And the First Amendment is a great thing, I think. Big fan of the First Amendment, me.
Big fan.
And that's maybe an obvious point to end on. Hooray,
Yeah.
the First Amendment. But you've done it again. You've listened to another hour of us bumming you out about intellectual freedom. But as with every episode we've done, I don't want you to leave bummed.
Well, I don't want you to leave bummed because I know that, like, here's the thing, folks. You can vote to have M&Ms make a blue M&M. You can voice your concerns to make McDonald's bring the Szechuan sauce back. But you could do something a little more fulfilling. Get involved with your library simply by voicing your support.
Yeah, simply by just showing up to it and say, hey, thanks for all you do.
Appreciate it.
Where are the romance novels? Can I check something out, please? You know?
Yeah.
Just, this is a way to help out. This is going to feel good, which is, honestly, I think, by definition, the most kind of pleasant way to help out. So, yeah, in many places, things are looking pretty sticky. And gosh darn, the librarians were fighting tooth and nail, but we could use the help. And I genuinely think we can make that difference because it's the only phrase I can come up with is hips don't lie, but it's not hips, it's like polls. It's like the data doesn't lie.
Yeah.
Like data often lies, but I think not in this case. Like the I've broken Cricket. The data doesn't lie. The majority of people think that banning books is bad. So cool. So let's make it sound like the majority of people think that banning books is bad.
And I think we just, for the record, spoiled Fahrenheit 451. Banning books is bad. I think that's the end of the book.
I think you should still read Fahrenheit
that's the book.
451,
You should
though.
still read it, though. And if you want to, it's on the shelves of your local library.
Yes.
So in conclusion,
Yes.
banning books is bad.
Yes.
It's okay to not like things.
Right?
And hips don't lie.
Yep.
They don't.
I think that is a fair assessment
They don't.
of the conversation we've just had.
Whatever floats your boat, your library has it. Whatever flies your kite, whatever makes your dreams take flight.
Yeah. And if you are in Michigan, one last plug, myrighttoread.com. My is spelled M-I, like the abbreviation for our fair state.
And speaking of floating boats, there's some libraries here in Michigan with our lakes that loan out canoes. So, I mean, again, not us because we're kind of landbound, but whatever.
So jealous.
It's out there.
It's out there,
You
folks.
can get a canoe at a library.
And summer reading is coming up.
That's right. So if you listen to another update on intellectual freedoms, I was joined by Cricket and Mary Graham. You guys can say goodbye or hello or...
I'm sorry I sang.
That was great.
Yeah, don't apologize for singing and go First Amendment, mind your own business.
MILibraries.org for the Michigan Library Association, but MIRightToRead.com for My Right to Read. We'll have links to that in the show notes. This has been A Little Too Quiet, the Ferndale Library Podcast. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. I am under-caffeinated. I can't remember if I introduced this episode. I feel like I did.
You. Thank you. I think you did.
I think I did. Thanks to John Duffy, who gives us music to open and close each episode. You can go to ferndalefriends.org to find more information, but please remember to rate, review, subscribe. If you leave us a review, it will help us find more listeners, and we would appreciate that.
And that counts as telling your library that you like them.
It does!
Oh, we made it so easy for you.
Listener, we appreciate you. Tune in next week for more.